broke through on Salvia for the first time in 2.5 years. I'll do my best to explain what happened because it was earth-shattering in a good way, and I want to hear if anyone here has had similar experiences. I've smoked Salvia at least a dozen times, but only broken through once before. That time was definitely worth it for the bucket list, but freaked me out a bit and left me with more questions about the meaning of life than before. Ever since that time, I would only take small hits for mild effects, but for the most part, wouldn't touch the stuff for months on end. Recently, I've been entertaining the idea of mirrors and their place in the supernatural world due to the malevolent feeling I get when I stare at myself in it for too long. Like I'm not looking at my reflection, but the reflection is looking at me. The other day, I took some salvia and stared at myself in the mirror for 30 minutes. I definitely noticed the effects of the salvia, but was aware of my surroundings the entire time. I must have been craving more on a subconscious level though, because the next night I loaded a bigger bowl. I sat down on a red leather couch in my room with the light set to royal blue. I also set my TV to a YouTube video of trippy fractal animations so that the mild effects would be amplified. I took a decent hit of the small 60x salvia bowl I had packed and started holding the smoke in. I remember leaning down to the right. I hadn't even had time to set the bong down before things started changing. Despite being in a blue room, the color shifted to a much more golden yellow wheat field sort of tone, but that's the easiest of changes I can describe. The next part is confusing because it happened in what I could only imagine to be a fourth dimensional plane, but I'll try describing it in an analogy. Imagine you're tie-dyeing a shirt. The first step is to pinch and twist in the middle until it is a bundle ready to dye. Now imagine that, but upscaled so that you become some unknown entity, and the twisted tie-dye shirt becomes the universe as I was now experiencing it. If you've heard a similar analogy for a wormhole with a piece of paper, this may help explain what I was experiencing. The center of this dimensional knot started off small at my right hip. Initially inconsequential, but once I noticed its significance, its magnitude grew. I could tell something was wrong, but couldn't tell what was wrong about it. It felt as if my head was bent over and going through my thigh, as if time and space had literally folded in half. By this point, I had of course forgotten that I had taken salvia. I felt trapped and scared and wanted to return to normalcy, whatever that was. Frantically looking for a solution, I realized that I could grab the center or tab that controlled this dimensional phenomenon. I quickly reached down towards my right hip, grabbed the tab, and pulled it in a leftward motion over my shoulder. To my horror, I realized that this only made things worse by actually increasing the rate at which my universe was collapsing with me at the gravitational center. I remember some force of my own mind saying, "Isn't it funny how all of your old problems pale in comparison to being stuck in a dimensional knot?" I agreed and pondered on how insignificant all of my problems in the past had been. I couldn't even remember them now. Anytime I resisted, reality only twisted more. My actions were irreversible. I could sense that the twisting was reaching its culmination and feared what was next to come. At this point in the trip, I was still holding the bong, and I know in retrospect that I dropped it on my duvet cover, soaking my blanket in dirty bong water. I probably saw this and thought shit to myself IRL, but this translated differently in terms of what I was perceiving. As the twisting progressed, my mind began to detach from all physical things, including my body. I felt as if I were a wet towel, soaked in memories, thoughts, and all of my worldly possessions, being wrung out by an unstoppable force. The last physical possession I saw leave me was the bong. As I dropped it, I started hearing obscene language and slurs from a chorus of voices, as if they were the final remnants of my words being squeezed out of me. The curse words continued in a shrill tone as the visuals I was experiencing increased to a level of complexity that I couldn't possibly describe to you now. With each dimensional fold, my confusion increased and I gradually moved towards the realization that I was probably dying. After all, my universe was literally collapsing. However, I also began to sense a benevolent presence that was contributing to the chorus of the curses. It felt as though someone were talking to me and cradling me through the whole process, as if it were divine. It felt as if each revelation of my death was made because of the things I was being shown. I then heard my inner voice speak in unison with my higher consciousness guide. I started calming down. Okay, am I dying? The benevolent presence affirms my suspicion. Well, I guess there's nothing I can do to stop it. At least I'll finally know what happens. This feels familiar. In a way, it feels right, like I am recalling forgotten information about the mysteries of the universe. At this point, I gasped in revelation. Oh my God, this is how I wanted myself to find out. I chose this long ago. I started to realize that the divine presence who was guiding and comforting me this whole time was myself, but not in the traditional sense. I was far more evolved and ever powerful. More importantly, I was a loving presence that happily awaited mortal me's return from the third dimension. I then said in awe, perfectly crafted to reveal everything to me. Does this mean I'll finally find out what happens next? Oh my God, I remember. I felt overjoyed as I began to realize that I was returning home. After this revelation, the dimensional collapse progressed exponentially. Until I finally left this realm and returned to what I now recognize to be my true origin, the soul consciousness from which we all originate. I will try my best to describe how this origin functions as I understood it. But first, some context. 5 years ago, I asked a girl named Bella if she believed in God. She told me that she believed we all derive from the same universal being. She believed that when you die, your soul rejoins the mass to merge with everyone else's. I found it crazy at the time, but in hindsight, I realized that I saw the exact thing she described. In this new yet entirely familiar plane, I saw my entire life and identity as a raised bump inside a massive cylinder or ring with what looked like pale blue lava flowing harmoniously amongst itself. However, it was not actually lava, but the physical form of all the energy, light, and consciousness in the universe existing as one. There are other bumps on the cylinder as well, each representing a different identity or soul currently experiencing a lifetime. Once a lifetime ends, the bump subsides and the identity rejoins the soul consciousness once more. I existed briefly as a bump on the cylinder, long enough to finally understand. Then, I felt a sense of euphoria rush over me as I, the bump, lost all form and merged back into the ring, just as all bumps have been doing for infinity. I was actually happy to be dead. Being a part of and circulating with this energy and presence felt amazing and all-loving. As I thought about how human experiences are only accessible through the ring, I realized I could live a life again if I wanted, but it was all up to me. To clarify just how up to me it was, the small amount of identity that I had left could decide to disperse and fully integrate back into the ring, or stay as a unit moving among other identities who chose the same path. Additionally, I could choose to go back to Earth reincarnated if I so desired to inhabit a new vessel to experience life. I could even live the exact same life all over again. This entity truly defied all laws of time and space as humans understand it. I remember feeling a strong sense of relief and even laughter when I thought about all the moments wasted worrying about my mortality, when I should have known that nothing ever ceases to exist. It simply changes forms. Just as energy cannot be created or destroyed, neither can consciousness. I felt at one with the universe. I don't remember coming out of the trip too well, but I remember being back in my room and seeing the trippy fractal animations I had put on my TV beforehand. They looked way more trippy than usual, and the patterns extended past the screen. I wrote a summary of what happened on a piece of paper while still partially tripping. The handwriting was frantic, large, and messy. It read as follows. Things were peeling in a dimensional way. I heard slurs culminating to my life force, ending realizing that that was how I was going to tell myself. It culminated till I died. It was quite comforting. I had forgotten who I was. I can't remember what I wanted. I remember when I was writing this being frustrated about the last sentence. That wasn't me explaining how I felt during the trip, but rather the frustration I felt over forgetting something crucial. My best bet is that it was some concept that actually explains the science behind everything I'm claiming. I'll always wonder though. That was today's trip report on Third Eye Chronicles. If you enjoyed the journey, make sure to like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you think, and I'll see you in the next trip.